Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Jazakallah khair for attending second part of the marriage series. Hopefully by last time and today, there are people who have already got married by now, inshallah, with our advice, yes, inshallah, or almost going to get married. They have found their spouse or their second potential spouse. So alhamdulillah, last time we talked about the important topic of tips on how to find a good spouse. Today we're going to be talking about basically you have found someone that you want to get married, and then there's a second obstacle, which is challenges before one commits to marriage. So we have here today, alhamdulillah, Brother Ali Diallo again and Brother Jamal Ashraff, and inshallah we will have Q&A with me and the brothers first, and then we will open the stage to everyone else to ask. If anybody is watching online, please do ask questions online as well. We will try our best to cater for those questions as well. If we cannot cater for them right now, we will answer you later, inshallah. So, assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, brothers.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I can see you're very happy to be back.
Yes, alhamdulillah. Very, very.
Topic?
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
No,
All right.
You carry on.
Okay,
Today.
so let's kick in. First question. So you have found someone. Found someone who wants to get married. And one of the hottest topics right now, well, not right now, one of the things that people think about, especially Muslims, is engagement. As Muslims, is engagement part of the Sharia?
All praise is due to Allah. We seek His help and we seek His forgiveness. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to welcome all of you from my side. And it was a pleasure last time that seniors like us could add value to the juniors and the upcoming generation, and sharing our experience, in the journey of life. And we are here again in the.
Sorry, can I just check if the mic is working? This one. 1 2 1 2. Yeah.
Or second episode of the same subject. So based on the second theme that's put before us, the first question by Brother Adeel Malik was, is engagement part of the... Well, there is a system in the Islamic Sharia where you do propose and you do get engaged. You fix someone for someone. The system is there. The requirement of engagement in Islam is that once the individuals are engaged to each other, it's recommended that they also get married as early as possible. You're not done engagement for a couple of years. So that is completely discouraged act in the Sharia. So once the male and the female are ready for marriage, after the family has come together and they concluded that, my son or my daughter is for your son or your daughter, the marriage time should also be fixed. Now, why such requirement is there? Why does Islam say? Islamic Sharia, the Sharia tells us that Islam encourages early marriages. It encourages early marriages. And the scholars tell us, as long as there is one spare room in the house and you have a grown-up child, you should get them married. The requirement is just an additional room for the couples to have their own privacy. Early as possible. The reason why is that I remember when I was a young boy, I was 18. Yeah, I was 18. I came across an Egyptian person who came here for business. Yeah, I still remember his name. His name is Taha Al-Zayyat. I don't know if he's still around. He's a very senior man. He met me after Asr, so I just came down with him saying salam. And he asked me, how old are you? I said, I'm 18, sir. Next year, you should get married. I said, brother, how does that work? Here we wait for jobs, promotions, and by the time we get married, we are in mid-20s or above. He said, I give you an advice. He said, when you marry next year, if with the will of Allah, you may have a child when you're 20. So by the time you become 40, your son is 20. So you will be able to journey through your child in a way that you don't get exhausted with him. So you have the energy to be with him. So you will actually bring your child up not like a father-son relationship, but rather like a friend. At that age, I didn't really comprehend it. I said, maybe it's the culture back in Egypt. I don't know. But when I went back to the traditions, I really found that was the practice of the companions. That was the practice of the companions. They would get their children married as soon as possible. And when I turned 40, I started to reflect. Man, what a profound advice that was. By now, I should have a child who's 26. If I really followed that advice. If I would have followed that advice. And how relieved that would be for me. Can you imagine? I would have grown up with him, played, whatever sports I played with him, because I would have had the energy. So Islam encourages it, and I go by it. If you can afford it, you can. So engagement in Islam is there, but don't delay the marriage. Get it married, get your children married as soon as possible, inshallah.
Anything to add on that?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Summa salatu wassalamu ala nabiyyina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa ala kulli man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin. Wa ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khairan for the opportunity for this second session. The brother has rightly mentioned, yes, in Islam there is a room for engagement. But we need to contrast this with the engagement as it is known in society today. So this engagement doesn't mean, okay, now I have identified my potential partner. Now we are already a couple. We can go to the cinema together. We can go to watch football games. We'll go to cricket games. We'll go to dinner. We will go to...
So after marriage, can I do that?
Mostly after marriage, there are other things to deal with. It's not going to cinema and other things. Yes, maybe in some cases, but let's reserve that. So the engagement in Islam doesn't give the people in engagement free interaction and interference with one another's life. You are not given a green light to live together. You are not given a green light to be alone in the same place. So engagement is there. If you guys need to interact, it has to be under the supervision of the guardians. There are clear guidelines in the Sharia how, when the potential partners, couples will deal with one another. I think the brother Ashraff mentioned it earlier in the previous presentation, and that has to be followed. It doesn't give one another free access to the other person, basically. It has to still be, you are still strangers to one another until there is what is called the nikah, the marriage itself. That's why engagement alone is not sufficient. It's just to identify a potential partner for the spouses. It's not legally binding. There is nothing in the Sharia to say, now this person has right over that other person. Because if death happened to either one of them at that time, there is no consequence. As if there is marriage, of course, the Sharia has clear guidelines regarding inheritance and other rights. So we have to clarify that point.
MashaAllah.
Jazakumullah khair.
Nice to see both opinions on this. Moving on, the next question I want to ask is about costs, financial burden, wedding. So not marriage yet, just wedding. I know you mentioned about, as long as one room, that's it enough. But in the reality that we have, a lot of the youth, they feel as if they are not able to get married because of the financial burden that comes with wedding, and then the idea of being able to, take care of other people.
Okay, you pass the mic to Brother Ashraf when you ask about costs of wedding and all that. The financial planner.
Marriage and financial planner.
Okay, this is very important. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ advised us how to go about this one. He said in an authentic narration, for those who have the means, those among your youth who have the means should means are required by a man to say, okay, I'm going to marry a lady. The woman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave a whole surah mentioning the right of the two women and that is in Surah Nisa. For this reason, Allah gave the man responsibility to bear the support to the woman. So the woman in Islam, she is in the guardianship of her parents or brothers or relatives mentioned in the Quran that haram. Take care of her, protect, look suitable what is called husband or potential husband for her, guiding her step by step. Not to choose for her, but to guide her choice. This is important. So when she is transferred from her family, looking after her, to the family of the husband, now becoming a wife, the man to look at her welfare. Is providing housing, providing healthcare, clothing, and protecting her, giving her security. So it is important before you marry as a man, you have the possibility to cover these basic needs of the spouse, of the woman. Because number one responsibility you have to give your wife is a home. The brother already mentioned there is a spare room to be there because she is not mahram to many, or many men out there are not mahram to her. She is only safe and protected in her own home. So for this reason, the Sharia gave clear guidelines. You should first and foremost provide a house for your wife. So without the means, how do you cover this situation? Having the financial means to provide a house where she will feel comfortable and secure is number one responsibility. So for the rest, I think I will pass the mic to Brother Ashraf. He will supplement to the point I missed. I think there are a few more things you will add, inshallah.
When it comes to expenditure, the question is, which is true what Brother Adeel said, though the Islamic requirement is so minimum, but find what is the you come from, what's your background, right? So we don't want to indulge into that. But however, the question is why Rasulullah made such a statement that the highest blessing is in a marriage that has the least of expenditures. The reason is the way Islam looks at marriage is just like how we eat and drink. The necessity to eat, drink, sleep is what? Is basic. And if you are not given the basic, then you will try to somehow fulfill it with other means, which may be inappropriate, incorrect, or illegal. So marriage in Islam also has the same status. As soon as a boy or a girl reaches the age of puberty, when their hormone starts to react, they start to realize that there is something happening physically to them. And they start to see the opposite gender as an attraction now. No more shame, puppy, shame. When you're young, we all girls, boys, But a certain age comes, we kind of have this attraction to the opposite gender. Now, Rasulullah wants to make it simple, so everyone in the community is married. In the time of Rasulullah, nobody stayed a single. Nobody. The Ummah, the first generation of Rasulullah, they made sure if there was someone left out in the society, somehow some Sahabas will go and put. Whether they are women who lost their husbands due to natural causes or due to battles, or this girl has reached, the age of puberty, there's always somebody proposing either way. So nobody in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam remained a single. You see? So now what happens when you want to break this norm and want to adapt what is in the culture? People are making, they're working very hard for 5-6 years just to show to the people that my marriage was more expensive than so and so. So 6 years of your precious life, your time, where you could have got married and now be having a child of 5 years old. And how do you cool your passion during this time? How do you control your desires? You see, all these problems are there. So if marriage is something very basic, it cannot be used for social status. It can't be used to show, I'm spending more than the other. This is extravagance. And by doing that, we are spoiling our children and we are opening doors of zina for them now. Parents and the society as a whole is opening the doors for the children to go wrong, to fall into inappropriate interactions or inappropriate or indecency. Right? And coming to the fasting also, Brother Diallo said that, Rasulullah said the hadith is for those of you young men who can afford marriage should marry, for it is a cooling of your passion and is lowering of your gaze. But for those who cannot, should fast. Now, fasting again is not something that is permanent. You can't do that forever and ever and ever and try to control your needs. You can suppress it for some time, that's it. But it can't be forever. So early marriage is encouraged and it should be kept at the lowest cost. I personally have attended so many weddings of sometimes revert brothers and sisters, sometimes, Muslim boys or girls were born into an Islamic family from the young. You know what was the expense? 2 biscuits and a cup of tea. That's all. That's all. They invite, you go, and I bear witness to the wedding and I sign. After the marriage is done, you get 2 biscuits to dip and have your biscuits in your tea, and then that's done. We go away and, they get married, and in a year, the brother comes and tells the brother, I got a son. I got a twins. You feel so happy. Now, how simple was that? So this is the reason why Islam has made it so simple that, it should be accessible and it should be for all people. right?
You actually touched on another question on the neglect, which was, again, from our culture, especially, I don't know about others, but we're always comparing weddings. My wedding, they had this, they had a car coming, they had this hotel, I want the same. He's my only son. This dignity, this honor comes into play somehow. And then they even start taking loans out on interest just for that one day or that 3 days. Or now it's become 5 days even. Can I just touch upon this topic now, which is in Islam, how many days are there for a wedding?
I would say just there are no days.
Okay.
You declare, you sign the witness paper, and so and so is the daughter of so and so, son of so and so is my husband. I agree to this, and you're married off. No exchange of rings, no expensive necklace, or no fine jewelry, nothing. You just have to give mahar. And we know so many hadiths where when a Sahaba would come to propose a Sahabiya, he will ask, what do you want? She will simply say, read one surah from the Quran, that's my mahar. That's all. You teach me one surah, that's done, I'm done. I'll marry you. You see, but of course the rights of demanding the gift money is upon the women. She can declare. Quran says even if you are given the mountain size of gold, don't take it back. If you divorce, in case, if you divorce, don't take it back. It's a gift money you give her, it's for her. Don't take it back. So we can just teach. If a sister is so pious, you can simply say, teach me Kul Huwallahu Ahad. I'll marry you. I don't need expensive rings. I don't need a house at the peak. If she has the right to demand, she can simply, the other way, say, look, if you want to marry me, if you think I'm so gorgeous, then I definitely need a own house in a condominium. Get me one. Register under my name, next minute I'm your wife. She has the right, right? So for those who are competing to marry their children like this, Allah, you're answerable to Allah. Because, children don't come to their parents and say it. When I was young, I couldn't go and tell my father and mother, I think I'm ready to get married. Right? Because we all know what is marriage, what happens after marriage. We all know. But you can't tell that to your father. It becomes like shamelessness. How can you go tell your father that I want to get married? So what you do, because your parents are competing, especially in subcontinent culture, this is there. When you're competing to do this, your children are logging on. Today you can log on to internet. Right? In my time it wasn't there, but now easy. And then now as parents, you're paving the way for them. And there are brothers who are so addicted to those inappropriate sites, it haunts them even after marriages. I know marriages which have dissolved, they got divorced. Marriages have been dissolved because the sister comes and says, because my husband is so hooked up to these websites. And when you interview the brother, go to him and ask, what happened? Bro, you got married, so what's the point? He said, bro, this is what happened. My parents dragged it for 6-7 years. I had no way, to control my lustful feelings. So I used to log on to this as just to relieve myself temporarily. But it became such an addiction. Now, even when I look at my wife, I still find she's not up to what I see on these websites. Now, who created the situation? Parents. And you're going to answer Allah for this. Allah has given every one of us an amana, that's our children. The children are blessings in the house. Ask those husband and wife who don't have kids. They will tell you. When you don't have children, you have no reason to even work hard. You're happy with what you get. Right? So parents who don't have children will know what it is. And these parents who Allah has blessed them to have a child, and now what you have done? You have ruined their life. So that's why it's very important for parents, once your children hit the teenage mark, try to get closer to them, try to be friends with them. Because they're not going to tell you everything. I would not, even till today, I can't share a lot of things with my father. Right? I have that. I had to draw my line. It's just out of respect. He's an elderly person. I can't just go and say everything. Of course, he knows a lot of stuff than me. So same thing with my children, however close I may be to them, maybe I'm more like a buddy to them, but they have limits. They will draw the line. They say, no, I can't discuss these matters, right? So as parents, we should look into these things. We have to be proactive. We cannot ignore the small cries of a child, right? And psychiatrists tell us, when your children are locking the room and staying in the room for a long time, these are symptoms. They're already feeling the pinch of loneliness. So these are signs that we have to keep learning ourselves. And as parents, we have to keep on renewing our knowledge to understand how our children are behaving, why the behaviors are weird. It's weird because you are just dragging, what is naturally is their rights. So, this is a dire situation. And I see a lot of programs being done in the Muslim world by a lot of great teachers and shuyukh on pornography addiction. And, so this is a serious thing. Once you get hooked onto it, it's like a drug. It's like a drug. It just never goes out. It's in the blood. For a few years, maybe you're off, you go back again to it. So in order for us to, eliminate it from our bloodstream, parents should come into playing their roles.
One of the other, I will touch on a similar kind of question which I asked, which is when there are things in regards to wedding now again,
Right.
and it contradicts between culture and religion. So they might, again, different cultures have different practices they want to do with regards to wedding. How would you handle such a situation where a man or a woman doesn't want to do those practices which the parents want to do because they see them not from Islam?
Right. It is very important that we clarify the Islamic requirement for a marriage. Okay? Islam, for a marriage to take place, require three or four things, basically. Number one, for a marriage to be valid in Islam, there should be consent between the parties getting married. Consent of both the male and the female. And this consent cannot be taken from a third party, except when the Prophet ﷺ advised, when you're asking for your young girls, if they want so and so in marriage, they kept silent. Their silent is taken as their consent. Otherwise, it has to be pronounced verbally. Yes, I agree to marry Mr. So, or I agree to marry Mrs. So. Consent is there. Number two, as per the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the lady has to have a wali, someone representing her from her family, basically. And if the father is alive, it should be the father. In the cases when these are Muslims, if there is nobody to stand for her, the Sharia gave another option, the imam, or the one who is leading the nation, and that can stand as the mahram for the lady. So that's the number two condition. Number three condition is the dowry. As the brother mentioned, this should be minimum. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the companion and the previous righteous predecessors, the previous nations, they used to make it like he mentioned an ayat of the Quran or teaching me something or about the deen and so forth. In our time, the scholars are advising that the mahram should be something tangible that can be touched, something you can touch, not limit ourselves only to something symbolic, like, okay, I will take you for Hajj. Because divorce is very common during this time. The scholars step in to say it has to be something the lady can take when, in case there is a divorce, she will take this as a consolation to say, yes, this is my right. So these three things, when they are there, all we need is to have a witness. The male doesn't have to have someone representing him from his family. As long as he is adult, he expresses his intention to marry. If the parents from the girl side agree to it and they give her in marriage, the marriage can be what is called marriage contract can be signed. Additionally, part of the sunnah will be to make dua for them, is to give the khutbah, and this is called the khutbatul hajah, and we hear it very often when we go for Friday prayer. What is it? Inna alhamdulillah nahmadu wa nasta'inu wa nastaghfiru wa natubu ilayk, and so forth. And then recitation of the Quran from Ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatihi wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun, and the first ayat of Surah Nisa, and the last ayat toward the last ayat of Surah Al-Ahzab, reminding the couple of their responsibility, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the ummah, creating the mankind from a male and a female, and we will be answerable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, telling every one of us to take up their responsibility, giving the other party their right. So these are the basic. Now, anything coming from cultural practices can be accommodated as long as they are not clashing with Islam. Because the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in an authentic narration, he said, Al-Ada Hakama, meaning the custom of the people is a way of ruling, is a way of judging. It becomes part of the Sharia. As long as these customary practices are not in contradiction with the Sharia, the Sunnah. They will be in contradiction when they go extravagant. As the brother mentioned, we competing about organizing the most celebrated marriage. I want to bring so many Rolls Royce, or what do you call them? Limousine. I want to hire this hotel. I want to spend this much on the food. These are practices that are against the Sharia because there is a lot of waste on it. And the brother mentioned a particular point. A lot of people will fall into it directly or indirectly, taking up loan. This taking up a loan has consequences because most of loans have interest, and interest is called in the Sharia riba. The danger of it is the only sin, S-I-N, is it? Yeah. Sin, for which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said it is declaring war between him and the person. He didn't mention this one for any other type of sin. So the sin of riba that the people will fall into by trying to go beyond their limit, beyond the prescription of the Sharia, is causing them to fall into the riba. And the riba has consequences in this life, have consequences in the grave, have consequences in the hereafter, on the day of judgment, in hellfire. So this is a door we don't want to open. We don't want to fall into it. So for that, it is the utmost responsibility of parents, community leaders, imams, to make sure marriage in Islam is following the basic, what the Sharia requires. Make it simple, accessible, and inshallah there is a blessing. The more we follow the Sunnah, the more we get reward. It's easy for everyone else, inshallah.
Okay.
So,
that's the reason I mentioned the 2 days thing, right?
Right.
When you have the nikah and walima is a part of the Sunnah.
The walima is part of the Sunnah from the lady's side. I am aware. I'm aware, yes, of some cultural practices that say there should be someone standing for as a witness for the man and witness for the woman. No, the Sharia only recommends there is only one from the female side. This is to defend her right in case of problem in the marriage. And this person, because there are a lot of things the lady is not in a position to discover about a man. That's why before she decide this is the person I want to marry, she should have someone from her family to know the background and details about this man. And this is the role of the wali, who is going to stand for the lady. For example, if Brother Ashraff, I don't give this example from myself. If Brother Ashraff want to marry someone from my family, I go playing football with him, I go swimming with him, I interact more with him. So I know some of his characters that someone who is not close to him will not know. So I will be the one to disclose this kind of information to the lady from my family, my sister or my daughter or whatever. Will say, this man, he has this character, he like this. When he lose in the game, he will start fighting. When he doesn't get his food on time, he will start fighting. So I will get to know these details that the lady is not able to know, because I'm more into interaction with her, the brother. So that's why it is important for a wali from the lady side only. And by the Sharia, if there is no wali, the marriage is not valid. This is also to be understood. I'm aware of a practice that say even if there is no wali, someone can just we can marry them off. But as per the Sharia, if we follow the rules, the marriage is not valid without a wali, regardless of any other opinion.
So to interrupt you, this is a good point. The thing I'm thinking about is people who are obviously, falling in love with each other, but the parents will say no, and you know what, let's just run away and get married. Let's just have the car somewhere, somebody would, stand for me. Is this okay?
No, it's not okay for anybody to marry a lady without the consent of our wali. There is a slight variation. For example, when there is stubbornness from the father, for example, he's refusing without a valid reason for his daughter to marry a suitable, in that we can override, the Sharia allowed to override his opposition to this, and it has to be done from his family also. The brother can stand as a wali. If the brother is not there, the uncle, who is the younger brother of the father, can stand as a wali. This can be delegated. If none of them is available, the imam of the locality can be standing for that, because he sees the injustice, the oppression the father is doing to the daughter in this case. So because this is an oppression now, you are refusing the person their right for no reason. And in this case, only. But we cannot take the exception and make it as a general rule. The general rule is, the general rule is the wali should be there from the lady's side. And the exception, these are a few we can find in the.
Well, I want to go deeper into this cultural thing again. If, like I said about the other as well, if there are practices the parents want the children to engage in on the wedding day, which are not from the Sharia. For example, a simple practice from our culture is putting the Quran on the woman's head as she is walking down the aisle, right? And they say, of course, the intention is good. They say, look, we want to give the barakah of the Quran to the marriage, right? This is just one example. Other things like before the marriage day, there's this ceremony called the Mehndi, not the Mehndi, the Mehndi. And then now even before that, we got another one called Mayyum, right? So these kind of practices, obviously, it adds up to the financial burden. But more than that, like if the children know that, look, this is not from Islam, But the parents are stubborn on this. What advice would you give to the children?
Um, this is very common where we come from, right? I don't see that's the culture in Hong Kong or in the West. Now, what's happening is these cultural practices, the Muslims living in the subcontinent has actually inherited it from their forefathers who were formerly not Muslims, right? It comes from either Hinduism or it comes from other faith that was prevalent at the time in India. Now, though they have embraced Islam, by name, but a certain culture that belongs to other faith has also creeped into Islam. Now, these practices, some practices may not fall under a major sin. Maybe just a practice, which Islam may not really object. But there are practices like the brothers say, putting the Quran above the head of a girl because they want the barakah. This is the innovation. This is bid'ah. This is nowhere to be found anywhere in any of the hadith, even in the weak hadith. Even the da'if ones, we can't find it. So what happens is that when you start incorporating these cultural evil, actually, I call this really evil to put Quran above. Of course, the Mehdi part is fine as long as females are amongst females, males are among males. There's no intermingling of genders. There is a barrier between them. Then it's fine because you want to beautify yourself for your first interaction with your husband or your wife. There's nothing wrong because you have to smell good, you have to look good. This is also part of the Islamic ethics that you have to always smell good. That's why Rasulullah, because in my study of the character of Rasulullah, if you ask me the most romantic person, I would say Rasulullah. He was the most romantic human being that have ever walked the earth. He would come to the house. Before he enters the house, he would use his miswak to clean his teeth. Why? So he may smell pleasant to not his girlfriend, not his fiancée, but to his wife. You see, even though, his wives were his wife already, while most of us take that for granted, right? We don't care about our body odors. We just come home, give, smell bad. But Rasulullah would stop at the doorstep and he brush his teeth and then he enters into the house and says salam. Amazing. And you may do this where you are in love with somebody because you put up this impression about. After marriage, everything fades away, right? But Rasulullah demonstrated to us, even after many years of marriage, he had that, right? So some practices, yes, it may lead to a major sin in Islam. Some practices may not lead to major sin, but it may lead to a place where it's discouraged. So as Muslims, we have to lead as an example to other people. We cannot incorporate these ideas of other culture into Islam and say this is Islam. So we are also indirectly being a hurdle to people who may embrace Islam. Because I know so many people here in Hong Kong who are not Muslims. And they have a desire to become a Muslim. But you know what they say? What difference does it make if I become a Muslim? Because I have Muslim friends, I don't see anything big different between them and us. So when you really analyze it, yeah, they're right. There's no big difference between the Muslims and the non-Muslims. So why should they become a Muslim for? See, so they decline. So now Allah is going to hold us accountable for that. So what we may do or we may think is very insignificant may not be the same in the sight of Allah. So we have to be very, very, very careful with these type of practices. Like I told you, right, in Morocco, they have a practice. As soon as you get married, you can't enter into the room of your wife. They'll separate you for 7 days. Then what? So these are is where, like Umar radiallahu anhu said, you can propagate Islam without speaking a word. How? People ask, he said, with your character. Your character should be so unique that people want to know what exactly are you following, right? So this is where it is. It's dangerous. Some of the practice I've seen in video clips, it's too much of intermingling and too much of in haram environment and very cautious of.
And one last question before I open the stage. Um, Marriages between different ethnicities, would you think it's acceptable? Would you encourage it? Even like between, like, for example, for reverts, and they don't see these different ethnicity as a problem, whereas people, Muslims coming from Islamic backgrounds, they have this cultural thing holding on to them. What advice would you give to them?
SubhanAllah. Very important question, because Islam does not give any distinction between nations and tribes. It gives the criteria of fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, we are aware of differences in practices, in culture, and customs, but these should not be barriers between Muslims, because we all have a common ground. That is the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whenever there is conflict between our cultures and understanding of things, we put the Quran and the Sunnah as means of arbitration between us, then the problem is solved. The ultimate guidance for mankind is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, yes, there will be some conflict and clashes in some minor areas, but it doesn't mean someone from Africa cannot marry someone from India, because there is no barrier basically Islamically in terms of race or language. As long as the two parties can understand each other, they agree to live by the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I don't see any barrier to it. Even though there will be objections from families here and there. For example, a Muslim man born in a Muslim family and all that, he will see a reverse sister to whom he want to marry. The family from the male will start bringing objection here and there, listing all kind of difficulties they want to object to it. But the marriage, again, is between the two people getting together. It's not marriage and my family. This has to be made clear. And the moment the two spouses decide, the two people decide to marry, then eternal life should not be interrupted and people outside. Nobody has the right to come and interrupt their marriage. Nobody, from the male side or the female side. No one can come and nullify the marriage except by the Sharia. And this has to be either what is called the Sharia, the imams or the leader of the community will notice that this marriage cannot go further for this and this reason. The lady will complain, I cannot stand this husband anymore. She will list her reason, and the leader will decide, okay, I will dissolve the marriage. Otherwise, anybody from outside cannot come and interfere with this with the marriage by stating conditions that are not there. Basically, the Sharia does not prohibit anybody to marry someone else from a different color, different race, different language, different culture, including religion in certain cases. Because the Sharia gave us, the Muslim, the right to marry from the people of the book who meet certain criteria. And we're not going into those details. It's not necessary.
I think we'll end this here. Do you have any other points on this?
Yeah.
Yes,
Like Brother Diallo was saying, from the Islamic point of view, there is no limitations to who you want to marry. Right? Rasulullah said, if there is someone who proposes to your daughter and his character is sound, his deen is sound, and if you refuse to give him your daughter, then await fitna to prevail. This is a statement of Rasulullah. So if a boy is interested in a sister, he wants to get married to her, and he decently approaches the family to ask her in hand, and if the family declines, knowing that he's of a sound character, then Rasulullah wonders, then fitna will prevail. Right? Now, this being said, we need to also understand that women coming from different culture background can pose a different challenge. So you need to bear that in mind. Right? Islamically, no issues. Right? You can marry as long as the person is of a sound character, and that person, his level of iman, his level of faith in God Almighty is good. But if someone from West wants to marry someone from the East, they will have hurdles. There will be cultural conflicts, which you will have to overcome together. Now, where do we find this? We find this in the time of Rasulullah himself. Umar radiallahu anhu came to Rasulullah and he was complaining about whom? He was complaining about women of Medina. He said, Ya Rasulullah, women of Medina are very bold. They're very frank. They're blunt. And they are spoiling the women of Makkah, because women of Makkah are more shy, reserved, they don't talk back, they don't raise their voice. But women of Medina were different. They were very aggressive. Do you follow? Who was making the complaint? Umar radiallahu anhu. And what is the culture between people of Medina and Makkah? Same.
East and West. He doesn't want us to marry here in Asia.
Now, women of Makkah are Arabs. They follow Arab culture. And women of Medina are the same. Even within the culture, Islam identified the different characters. So why I'm telling you this is because a lot of brothers I know, as soon as they become a Muslim, they become a Shahada, they declare Shahada, not from here, from other part of the world. Immediately they're thinking to marry an Arab. Immediately, that's the next thing they're going to ask you. Okay, I said my Shahada, now brother, I want to marry, and I want to marry somewhere in Arab countries. I said, do you know anything about Arabs? He said, no, I know they're closer to the Sahaba. Oh, that was olden days, man. It's not today. Today Arab ladies are very demanding. You remove that idea. And some of them, as soon as they say the Shahada, they want to marry a Western revert. They're from the East. They have no idea what Western culture is. You see, it's not Islam, but it's the culture. It's just the way they're brought up. Like, for example, in the West, if there's a sister, she has no issue sitting cross-legged. Islam has no issues also. But people from East, we have a problem to see a woman putting her legs like this, sitting in front of men. You see? So you need to know how to adjust to all these things, or how to tame them in a way that they understand your culture. So this is there. The difference is always there. That's what Allah says in the Quran, O mankind, we created you from a single pair, and we divided you into nations and tribes. You see, so Islam is not here to abolish culture, but to give it life by making sure that culture does not go against the Sharia of Allah. So what I want to really instill in your mind is that if you're planning to marry anyone outside your culture, learn their culture first. So when the sister or the brother take her or him to her family, you know exactly how to behave, right? I tell you how. One simple example. I have a friend. When we go for lunch, we had our lunch. In big restaurants, they give you water with a lemon inside to just wash your hands, so you have fragrance in your hand. This brother has no idea what this is. He looks at it. He takes the lemon and then he drinks it. I said, no, this is not for drink. You see, from the same culture. You're not just aware of it because you're 50 kilometers away from where I live. So within us, within our own culture, we have differences. So what about cross borders? You're going to have, so if you are planning or anyone else is planning to marry anyone in the West, East, or South, you're very well proceed as long as you find the sister attractive to you and you find her to be good conduct. And if the sister also finds the brother to be in the same way, proceed. But before you do that, try to understand what offends them culturally and what may not offend them. And that culture practice may not be against Islam, maybe it's just within the framework of Islam. All right, so this is my advice.
I think it's also really important to note that, as Muslims, we need to take out this concept of nationalism and tribalism. Within our own, like for example, in Pakistan, people from Lahore don't allow people to marry people from Karachi. People from Islamabad will marry from Rawalpindi. Same culture, but just because this again is or whatever excuse they give, and it's happening even in today's age. So it's really important that, as you said, as parents, that we don't fall into this trap that just because of our whatever background, we stop our children from a good proposal. Jazakallah khair. And now I would like to ask brothers and sisters any questions. You got 15 minutes.
Mostly you are missing main point is that you are always insisted that is marriage is between Islam between two individuals. It's a contract between two individuals. That's what you are insisting. But largely it is between the two parties. There should be agreement between the two parties. Because in order to, when you take the issue of talaq, Allah says that few people of the girl and the few people of the guy has to sit together. Then they have to thrash out the problem. So that has to be put in front before the marriage. There should be an agreement because Islam says nikah is a contract. It is merely a contract. Any acceptable and lawful agreement should be comes off. Then only the marriage can be effective with the consent of the both parties, individuals.
The brother is mentioning something important because you made your explanation that the marriage should be between two parties, and these two parties ultimately they are individuals, not the families. And when you finish your statement, you came back to reinstate that these are individuals. What is important? The lady should have a male representative from her family side, someone representing her interest. When there is conflict, be delegated to talk on behalf of that man. He doesn't have to have someone from his family. So the marriage is between two parties, but from the male side is the man himself. From the female side, I'm emphasizing this point. Why? Because a lot of people will think if I don't have someone representing from my family, I cannot go and propose to a family that I want to marry their daughter. So yes, the consent has to be by the two, male and female, and the consent of the girl should be guided, supervised by her parents. Because most of the case, what happened? There are some sisters out there, they are under the guardianship of their parents, and they're reaching the age of puberty. They're getting fed up of receiving orders, receiving instruction, what they should do and what they want to just finish and go out and live on their own, where they are free to make their own decision. This is my home. I decide when to do this and when not to do that. While if I'm with my parents, they still keep telling me what to do and what not to do. So it is not for you just to feel I'm releasing myself from this bound of control from my parents. I can throw myself into the arms of anybody out there. So this person out there may not be the rightful spouse for you in the long term. That's why it has to be supervised by the family. So yes, consent of two parties. From the male side, he himself can represent himself or a representative. So that's the point I wanted to make.
But Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he says that. That is Prophet Abdurrahman Doi. He has mentioned that here.
But
Even the lady,
let's not go into opinions of this or that. We stick to what the Sharia prescribe, because I don't want to go to have conflict with people. I was emphasizing during the presentation that regardless of the opinion,
to say that lady without a guardian she cannot marry.
that's
No,
That-
I don't think so. I'm totally
Okay.
refuting this charge.
okay.
Okay, inshallah, we can look into
We're
that.
not here for debate. If you
No, it is not a debate. Islam has not leave us in an opaque manner, right?
absolutely, there is clear guidance on marriage in Islam. The clear indication is that you need three things.
He has
The
mentioned
fourth one is the khutbah. Number one, consent. Number two, the dowry. Number three, the wali from the lady. Without there is a clear hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, "La nikaha man la wali." You know about this hadith? How are you gonna refute that then?
No. That is mostly for the what is that?
Now you are making tali of the hadith.
No. It is
But the
not.
hadith is saying,
Inshallah, we need to move
now
on.
the hadith is saying there is no nikah except there is a wali.
That is for
This is the statement of the hadith. Now how you gonna explain it is a different thing.
No. That is for the minors mostly.
Okay, inshallah, we can look into this.
For the major, they have the right to decide. Both the party can decide.
All
In
right.
fact, he has quoted one hadith, Prophet Abdurrahman Doi. He has quoted, the widow and the divorced woman shall not be married until her order or ordained, and the virgin shall not be married until her consent is obtained.
Okay, I think we can agree to disagree. Inshallah, we can look into this more in detail.
There is no
Anybody
disagreement
else?
actually.
That's fine, bro. Yes, Brother Bhuvan.
But if the witness of the whole family, let's say the girls, their family, the witness are not Muslim, and let's say the father is not there, and let's say me, my father represent me, but he's not Muslim.
Okay.
Is it okay?
The brother is asking.
He's in a safe one, huh? He isn't getting caught there. Let me handle it.
The brother is asking a very important question. It comes to what I explained before. The wali is for the females, not for the male. In a case of a man, if his father is there or he is not there is irrelevant. What the nikah require is that during the time of the marriage there should be witnesses, and these witnesses and this is the condition in the marriage is happening on this day on these terms. In case you go back to those agreements, to what you said, they will bring you to account. They will come and ask you, okay, we were there. This was the agreement between you and this lady and her family. So they will hold you to go back to what you agreed. Meaning they will claim the right of the lady from you, basically.
Having non-Muslim, I think that was the thing there, right? Can the wali be a non-Muslim? That's what he's trying to say.
What the Sharia is Muslim.
Okay.
That is what is required from the Sharia perspective. The person has to be a Muslim. That's what I know. If there is something that I miss, it will be a shortcoming from my side. But the person has to be Muslim.
For this one, I will check with some because it's for reverts, right? You're talking about who, yeah, okay, inshallah. Give me some time. I will get back to you. I think I'll let brother Adeel inform. I'll inform him, and he'll pass on the message to you. Whether for non-Muslim in Islamic marriage setup. Inshallah.
Okay. Jazakallah khair. I have one more question. Anybody wants to ask?
To what extent can you compromise the arrangement of the wedding itself? For example, there'll be a lot of cultural pressure saying that you need to have some sort of dancing, you need to have some sort of
Music,
some sort of
free mixing,
and then of course the list goes on. Of course, the pressure you're saying on
the
the small
clothing. I know it, bro. I brought it up so many times.
I'm gonna start to throw away the things, and then I will pass to Brother Ashraff to iron it out. Because I tend to be very straightforward and sticking to what we know from the scripture. Okay, when we do that, you will sound antagonizing the people, and this is not my objective. Anyway, musical, what is called? Musical instrument used to be played during the time of the Prophet ﷺ for some weddings. But this musical instrument is not the one we know today. It's called the darf. Okay? It's basically is nothing to do with the musical instrument known in our time. It is a way to indicate that a person has gotten married. When the people hear this, they will start asking questions. Well, what is the occasion? Why this is happening? They will say, Abdurrahman has married Maryam, the daughter of so and so. So after some days or some months, they will see Abdurrahman and Maryam together. People will know these are married people. It's to make it known to the community. It's not for the purpose of going there for entertainment, and as we know in most of the cultures or practices today. So the mixing of genders and interaction, of course, the Sharia has clear guidelines on it. We don't have to go through that. At what extent you can compromise? You can compromise as much as you are not infringing the rules of the Sharia. Anything between can be allowed. You can cook food from Africa to make the people from Bangladesh to taste it. That is not something beyond the Sharia, because people don't usually eat that kind of food.
In Bangladesh, prepare African food?
You can prepare. I can invite people to eat Indian food on my wedding as an Africans, because they're not used to that. I'm going beyond what is culturally accepted, but is still within the boundaries of the Sharia. I think Brother Ashraff has an interesting comment to make. I will pass the mic.
when it comes to haram practices, that must be completely avoided. Under no circumstances should we compromise as Muslims to something that displeases the Creator in the first place. There is one ayah in the Quran. Every time I feel lazy to wake up for Fajr sometime, because you're very tired, it comes to my mind. The ayah where Allah says, we have created men and jinn to only worship. When this ayah repeats in my head, Fajr for me is no big deal. Just get up and go, because my purpose is to worship my Creator. So why am I feeling lazy to sleep, lazy to do my prayer? And scholars have said, don't be stingy when you worship Allah. Don't be so stingy. Be free to worship Allah. Remember Allah as much as you can. So in that principle, when there is going to be haram elements, you have to stand up. And if, as Muslims, a youth, if you don't stand up to these things, then what else will you stand up for? Because this is your family. I'm not telling you to go to Lang Kwai Fong and say all these people, this is haram, haram, haram. Because you do that, police is going to arrest you. This is beyond your capacity to do it. You can just hate it from your heart and move away. But you can definitely tell your parents that if this is what you're going to do, I'd rather be single.
Can you go to the extreme? I was going to come to that. Like, if you tell your parents that, look, this, sorry, no can do. They say, have to do.
Well, here is a test of your iman. Really is a test of your iman. It's a test for you. Really a test for you. It's an individual test. And if we can't even stand up to this, then forget about victory for the ummah. Victory is never going to come. Did you follow? And coming to music, there's a beautiful book out there. I forgot the name of the book, but it's a beautiful book, the best book I've ever read on why music is actually forbidden in Islam. Scientific analysis. Scientific analysis. It's not only just talking about hadith and Quran. No. Scientific analysis giving you why and how it intoxicates your mind and what are the reality cases of people who were so much into music committed adultery, fornication, alcohol, drug, murder. And how music can really get. Music is a very complicated sound. It's not as easy as what we think. And I make no. I remember once asking my sheikh. I asked him, Sheikh, in agriculture, in farming system, we usually have bells hanging for our cattle and our goats. And the reason why we do that is that when the animal is in its shelter at night, if there is any dangerous creature, maybe a snake or a scorpion that is trying to creep in and the animal feels scared, it will start to move, shake so violently, the caretaker will hear the bell and he will rush for the rescue. That's the reason why they have bells, not because the animal enjoys music. It has no clue it is there, but it just moves the caretaker. It's for us. I asked the Sheikh, is it permissible? Because there's a hadith of Prophet ﷺ where he said bells are what? It's a son of shaitan. So when I came across this hadith, I called up my Sheikh. I said, Sheikh, please tell me. He said, no, this is haram. But this is about saving life. He said, extreme cases maybe. If you have to really hang that bell over there because you fear your animal can be killed due to wild cat or wild animals or even a scorpion or a snake, then maybe. But even that, my sheikh was very cautious. This is only for something that is necessary. What about wedding? I'm just giving an analogy. We take the idea of music very, very light. You know why? Because there's a hadith of Prophet ﷺ who said, my ummah will justify it. Look, I was a music lover before I started to practice Islam. You don't know. I can't even study for my exam unless I have Run DMC and Beastie Boys running there at the background.
Say that again? What about it?
Beastie Boys, Run DMC, LL Cool J, Modern Talking, all these things have to be at the background if I need to do my homework or need to study. That was my case. But as soon as I started to practice my faith, as soon as I realized that this is something major, it was very difficult. A lot of people, we ask a lot of non-Muslim, new Muslims, right? What was the difficult thing that you gave up? For me, it was music. Because I play music with my mouth, I can do beatbox. I enjoy doing it. I can make all type of sounds with my mouth, with animal sound.
Can you give us 10 seconds?
Even this, I asked my sheikh. Even this, I asked my sheikh. I asked sheikh, no music instrument is fine, it's haram, but can I just do beatbox? He said, he didn't say it's halal or haram. He just told me, why don't you say la ilaha illallah for that moment? Instead of you're making some sound, he said la ilaha illallah, because hadith of Rasulullah said, if you want to praise Allah, the best praise of Allah is to say la ilaha illallah. I said, okay, made a point. I said, no more, I don't need to know now whether it is haram or halal, because he's given me some better alternative. And then my sheikh, my teacher, my early teacher, told me why you should keep on saying la ilaha illallah, because you don't know when death will come to you. So when you're in your deathbed, Allah will make it easy on your tongue, because the angels will recognize your dhikr. Yeah, I'm just saying how important it is for us to keep away from these elements that are haram. Right? Because I know people have been justifying this and that. But I've done so much of study on this culture, this music and songs and this and that. If Rasulullah associated anything with Jahannam, anything with the signs of the Day of Judgment, keep off. You don't need someone to come and tell you this is okay. This is how I understand my religion. Anything, any act that Rasulullah said, you do this, you end up in Jahannam, in hellfire, or this is a sign of towards the Day of Judgment. For me, it's not my cup of tea. I want to keep off. Right? So try to avoid it. You have to. It's your fitna.
Time is up. Jazakallah khair. Alhamdulillah. I was just thinking that, I know we diverted a little bit, but I was just thinking, like, subhanAllah, just with the topic of marriage, we talked about Tawheed, we talked about fasting, we talked about Salah, we talked about Jahannam, Jannah, Ummah, right? It's an amazing subject that can bring so many things together.
Obeying the parents
Obeying the
has to
parents.
be followed as long as they don't ask you to disobey
Is
Allah.
this biting you all the way when he was talking? He was like, I want to say this comment. Alhamdulillah, this is the reason why I guess the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that marriage is half of deen. Because it brings so many things together. It brings so many practices of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam together as well. Jazakallah khair everyone for your contributions as well. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask on the WhatsApp or something like that. And then we can ask themselves or even our Mashaykh, inshallah. Next week, we will have Brother Omaro, who will be the host. And then we will have, I think it's Brother Ashraff and Brother Arif. And the topic will be on the challenges during marriage. So those who are married can come now. Or those who maybe they get married in this week as well, you can come as well. Inshallah.
Marriage itself is a challenge.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. With the challenges comes Allah's reward as well. And may Allah make us people who deal with challenges with patience and wisdom. And Jazakallah khair. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Allah is the one.